In New York, right, the context is one. New York is in many ways a quintessential city of immigrants. 1 out of 3 of our over 8 million residents is foreign-born. When you add their kids, it's 60% of New York City. So really, you know, the city has always been focused on immigrant issues, and it becomes a question of sort of how do you take action to ensure that this incredible diversity is also incredibly diverse immigrant population. So our top countries are the Dominican Republic, China, and then many people from the Caribbean, just to give you a sense of the sort of range of communities that are in New York. So we've, under Mayor de Blasio's leadership, really been working to address this question of sort of how do we make one city that works for all, a sort of city that rises together. And there are a few different ways that we've thought about that. So first, my priority has been how do we make immigrant inclusion really a part of the DNA of the city. So not something that just my office is thinking about, but it's actually something that all the different city agencies think about kind of as a matter of course, not at the end, not sort of something that's forgotten and then being reminded about. And how do we make sure that that's also just the way the city communicates kind of its programs and policies? And one notable example of how we've done this is launching a citywide municipal identification program. So the inspiration for this identification was really to serve the needs of the undocumented immigrants in New York City, and there's just over 500,000 undocumented New Yorkers. And those folks, unfortunately, without identification, you can't even get into a school to pick up their kid or participate in parent-teacher conferences. Wouldn't have an ID to share with police if stopped in the street, and so would get arrested instead of just getting a ticket. So to address that issue, we wanted to create a local government identification card. But we didn't want it to be an undocumented person's identification card. We really wanted it to be a card that was a symbol of being a New Yorker and that all New Yorkers would want to participate in. And so what we did is, in addition to just making the ID card, we incorporated a number of different benefits. Everything ranging from the card can double as your library card, you can put emergency contact on the back, to using the card to be able to get free memberships at 40 of the city's top cultural institutions, or being able to get prescription drug discounts. And so the idea was to make this a program that all New Yorkers would want to participate in, including, of course, the undocumented. And just over a year out, we now have more than 780,000 people who've signed up for this card, which is basically 1 out of 10 of the people who can get the card in New York signed up in the first year. And what's important about this is that people really feel proud that they are New Yorkers, and they're sort of entering into this conversation about migration, about undocumentedness, sort of by being a part of it, rather than that's those people over there. It's actually a very integrated conversation, and that's been really wonderful to see.
The situation in Germany is, the last year we had more than 1 million refugees in Germany. And I'm the representative district major of part from Germany. Germany has 431 districts and bigger cities. So we get, from this million, we get 4,340 people who come the last year to our district. And our job is to bring them, to integrate them. And we can say we doesn't have greater problems, because in our district, the people come, 30% of the people have migration ground. They came from Turkey, from Italy, from Portugal, since 30 years ago. And we have people from 120 nations in our district. And my strong conviction is this not a good idea to talk only about the problems of migration. I think this is a great chance for us to become people from all over the world to come to Germany. And we want to learn about the migration in other cities, and we also want to give examples for the integration of these people in our community. And we have a win-to-win situation between these people and us, because they bring a lot of new ideas, they bring us a lot of new cultural influence, and they give also a moment for our business model in the area. 2 examples. In Germany, it's a great problem that more than 60% of the students say they would like to get a job in the public sector. The people, the immigrants, like to have their company for their own. And so we get more than 2,000 new companies in our small district only for immigrants in the last 10 years. And we also start 10 years ago, that's the first district in Germany with an office for migration in our county, because we learned that it is very important to bring the language, the education, and the jobs very quick to the people who come to us. So we had also cooperation with our local bank to give to every refugee who comes to us very quick banking account. And it's very important that the people have a culture of welcome. If you talk about the problems and you say it's a great problem for us to integrate you, so the people doesn't have the moment that they feel welcome and they think they have to go away and to look for another land. And we do our very best to have a culture of welcome, to bring volunteers to learn the language with the refugees to come to us. We have more than 2,000 volunteers who learn the language with the people, who work with them, who bring the kids to the schools, we bring the kids to the daily health care. And we also think we have a great chance in the community in which the people becomes older and older, to get more younger people from all over the world, to integrate them and become a great opportunity to organize our future in the county.
I live currently in Vancouver, where I head an organization called HQ Vancouver. The job of HQ Vancouver is to attract companies, international companies, to set up their regional head offices in British Columbia. Now, when I took on this position about a year ago, many of my friends said, well, you're going to be spending a lot of time on the road, you know, knocking on doors of companies in Shanghai and Seoul and Mumbai and elsewhere to speak to CEOs about why Vancouver is a good place to set up your North American head office. And I said I didn't think so. I think actually most of my deal flow, so to speak, is going to come from within 5 kilometers of my office in downtown Vancouver. And in fact, I can tell you, in just 12 months of experience at this organization, 90% of the deals that we are working on are basically deals that have come to us from individuals who are already in Vancouver. These are individuals who have immigrated from, typically from Asia, mostly from China, in the last 5, 10, 15 years. They have established, of course, their families in the city. They've bought the big houses and they've bought the big cars and they've got the kids in the private schools or public schools and universities and so on. But they are looking to align their family interests after this period of settling, to align their family interests with their corporate interests. And you will not be surprised to know that many of these individuals are very plugged in to business networks in Korea and in Japan and in India and Southeast Asia and China. And they're now looking to find a way in which they can spend more time in Vancouver by moving some of their business interests over. So the nexus between prosperity, one of the themes of our conference, and immigration is very, very tight indeed. But it takes some time to germinate. And if there's one really important lesson that I'm learning already about the work of economic development and immigration, it is that you need patience. But if you don't have patience, and if you jump to conclusions about negative impacts of immigration too soon in the cycle, the life cycle of an entrepreneur, an investor, what you end up doing is that you create an environment that is actually inimical to business investment.
What I'd like to do is really link the conversation on diversity, settlement, and inclusion to that on city building and urbanism. Because what I think we've discovered over the years, certainly in our work at Maytree, is that immigrants and refugees want from a city what everybody wants from a city. They want affordable and good quality housing. They want the ability to move about the region easily on a good public transit system. They want good health care and schools. They want good jobs for which they have training and experience. They want safety and security that's underpinned by a modern community-based police service. And they want neighborhoods with parks and libraries and community centers and the other amenities that we all want from our communities. And I just simply make the observation that the city that works for everyone will work for newcomers. We've talked for years in our work at Maytree about mainstreaming services aimed at immigrants, and you talked a little bit about that, Nisha, in your comments. And I'll give you an example that Ratna will remember that we once received a funding request from a Toronto hospital for a special intake unit that they wanted to construct for a new group of immigrants, and I forget exactly what part of the world they were coming from, but they'd arrived in that hospital's catchment area and they wanted to be able to deal with them in their language and with cultural sensitivity and the rest of it. And we were quite interested in this at the start, but the more we thought about it, we went back to the hospital and declined the application and said that we really thought they should incorporate that facility into their normal intake and fund it from their central budget rather than treat it as an exception or an add-on. And we called that mainstreaming. And we encourage them to mainstream their intake of this particular group. And I think it's very important, and that's one of the challenges, of course, Nisha, you talked about with the identity card, is not just making it a niche thing for undocumented or for immigrants, but to make it a thing for New Yorkers, and I think that's an important concept. I guess I would offer some thoughts about then what cities can do to work for everyone. And if they're going to do that, they need the tools to do the job. And I would say those tools roughly fall in three categories. They need the powers to be able to control their destiny. They need governance structures that actually are effective and work. And they need the revenue base to be able to do it. Now, internationally, cities have different powers. They vary from country to country. I'll talk about Canada, but because I'm most knowledgeable about it. And in Canada, our powers are relatively weak. And they're always subject to being undercut or overcalled by the provincial government. Cities need sufficient powers to control their ability to build the city they want. They also need the governance that can make the task easier or more difficult. In Canada, our municipal governance structures are relatively weak, with mayors that have limited powers and councils with very loose political structures. And Ratna and John Tory had a little interplay about that this morning. And John quite rightly reacted in a robust way to it. Other countries, and New York being a perfectly good example, have stronger governance structures, which allows a more firm hand in city building. And then revenue is really incredibly important. Cities around the world have less revenue capacity generally than their national or state or provincial governments do. City regions are generally where wealth creation takes place, but much of this wealth gets transferred through taxation to other levels of government, and usually between 25 and 40% of the wealth created in an urban region gets exported to other parts of that country or region. And this puts cities in the position very often of seeking the assistance of other levels of government for big projects like transit and housing. In Canada, municipal governments are not allowed to levy income and sales taxes, the two big tax tools which grow with the economy. They're limited to property tax and smaller excise taxes and fees. And this puts them in the position of not affording city building for everyone. Without the help of another government, which may have different ideas or agendas or timetables, and certainly different politics. And I would just conclude this part of my comments with this observation that advocates for causes like diversity and inclusion, or for that matter, for poverty reduction or the environment, should not ignore the critical issue of whether their city region has the tools that it needs to get the job done. And I think it's important that if we're people involved in immigration issues, that we also become advocates for transit and become advocates for affordable housing and become advocates for policing reform, because this is how we're going to build a city for everyone that's going to serve the newcomer community.
Maybe I could ask you, Wolfgang, to speak about what is it about your city or your district that makes it smart when it comes to diversity and immigration?
I think we start very early for the German perspectives with migration. We had 10 years ago, we built an office for this, and we had, in Germany, we had a different situation. We had the eastern part of Germany, where only live 5% of people with migration, and the people there were afraid that people from outside come to them. And we have the western part. I'm a representative of the western part. We live with migration, and I think we are smart because we like the people who come to us. We live in a district with a frontier to the Netherlands, to Belgium, to France, and we are happy that people come from outside to us. And the people says we had the necessary to say welcome to these people. We have a lot of volunteers. We don't say that the federal government in Berlin had to organize it. We want to organize it. We want to say you are welcome. You come in smaller cities, you come in bigger cities, but we do our very best to say, please come to our schools, come to our universities, get jobs in our area, build a company for your own. This is our business and our winning business model for the future. And so it's a great chance that the people say, our community becomes, we lost people because the people were older, we doesn't have enough babies in the last 10 years. So the people who come with a lot of babies are very welcome to us. And this is our future. We need people to pay into our social system, so I get my tax, my money when I become retirement, and then it's my chance also. So I stand and say, welcome, please take a job and start your career. And it's very important that we say nothing about the negative impact. In the one part of Germany, the eastern and the southern parts, the people always, we have a newspaper or television, they have always the negative impacts. We say that it's a positive impacts, and the people in our country like it to think positive. That makes us smart.
Thank you.